Hey, I'm Max. I'm an alcoholic. Thanks for the warm introduction. It's always an honor to be asked to speak, especially speak here. I had no idea this group was so big. I actually didn't know there was this many alcoholics in Moore County. Being from Wake County, it's just we have big meetings, but this is a really big meeting. So, I'm from Apex, North Carolina. I grew up around there. My sobriety date's November 12th, 2007. I have a sponsor, home group, all that stuff, and like Steve said, I participate in AA, and it's my life in many ways. It's what we do, and so I'm going to do my best here tonight just to tell my story. I can't really change it. It's what happened. I'm going to tell you how I ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous, what happened to me when I got here, what my life's like today, and I'll tell you, preface it all now by saying, everything I have in my life today, all the good things that have happened, all the blessings that I have. I mean, I have a really, really good life. Like, I had nothing, I'll say I had very little to do with that. It's my best thinking, did not get me into Alcoholics Anonymous. My best thinking got me into a psych ward after trying to commit suicide. That was like where I ended up. That was the final destination before I started listening to other people who gave me their experience. They made suggestions. They told me things I must do that just changed the course of my life forever. And there's been miracles that have happened, and just amazing things. And so I don't forget it. Like I'll say it now. I don't think about drinking anymore. I don't have a problem with alcohol. I can be around it. I can see people drinking it. I can walk in establishments where it's being served. I can walk through the grocery store aisle and pay attention to the bread, not the beer behind me or whatever it is. Stuff doesn't bother me at all. It has no effect on me, which is absolutely a miracle right there. That's one that I never want to forget to mention to people, because when I got here, that was one of the things I just could never imagine. How can I make these thoughts that are in my head change? How can I make it disappear? How does one change their mind? Those are things I was baffled by, and then the mound of problems in front of me. So, start at the beginning. I was born into a good family, 2 parents, went to church, I played sports, I went to a good school, I ate probably pretty nutritious food growing up. I can't find anything real specific that made me end up the way I did, right? I had a good upbringing. My parents taught me how to pray. I didn't necessarily like going to church, but I went. So I had a lot of good. I grew up in Cary, so that's another part of I had a good life. I didn't. At one point, I would have told you my life was difficult and hard, and wasn't fair before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. But looking back, especially compared to the majority of the world out there, I have it pretty good. I probably started feeling a little uncomfortable in my own skin when I was about 12 years old, 11 years old. Most people do. Up until then, I just was a kid, and I had fun playing with my friends and being with my family. I started to feel real uncomfortable in my own skin. I started to get nervous. I think I started to realize I had a nervous disposition, and maybe that's just natural for any kid that age. But, I was always afraid to, there's this girl I really liked. I couldn't ask her out. I was just too afraid to do it. I wasn't that good at sports, even though I wanted to be. I just felt kind of goofy and out of place. I still do sometimes. And I had an older brother I looked up to, and he was better at everything than me. He was just he was popular, he was cool, he was, on the football team and all this stuff. I really looked up to him a lot in every way. And, I remember catching him drinking and smoking when I was about that age, and immediately being like, I got to tell on him, and he, before I, did anything, he's like, slow down, why don't you try this? And so I tried it and realized I couldn't tell on him then, and also found that I loved it. My first time drinking, him and his friend were, in my parents' liquor cabinet. We had a chair, and it was up above the top cabinet, and they were pulling down bottles of whiskey and vodka and gin, and every liquor you could imagine. I would take a shot of each one, and then probably about 6 or 7 shots in, I'm feeling really good, and I could hear the angels coming down from heaven singing, and that light feeling, and that all the burning sensation in my stomach, and I just remember all my fears disappearing, and that euphoria just overtaking my body, mind, and just was like, man, this is the best thing I've ever felt in my life. And I went out and found my friends in the neighborhood, and I had the best day, and I remember hitting the bed that night. I didn't get in trouble. I didn't black out and throw up or anything like some people talk about. I've heard a lot of the stories. I just had a great time, and I thought to myself right then, I'm going to do this as much as I can do it, possibly, because this is like, I'd figured out the secret to life, in my opinion. All that stuff I was always so worried about as a kid just went away, and so I set out to do that. I kept going back to that liquor cabinet and filling the bottles with water, and it wasn't long after that I found this girl I liked, and I asked her out and kissed her, and that was like, man, that right there is a big check for alcohol. It's doing for me things I could not do for myself. I just felt like it was awesome. So fast forward, all the way into high school, I'm still pursuing this with all my might. You can't do it every day when you're a little kid, but you find ways to do it and experiment with other things. And I kind of just became very open-minded, willing to try anything you put in front of me. So I say 10th grade was a pretty bad year for me. I got kicked out of school. I quit playing all the sports I was playing, and I was in trouble with my parents all the time. And that was like the first consequences I had. And I ended up somehow graduating high school. I don't know how. I didn't really do anything. I never really studied. I never really read the books or did the assignments. I just kind of showed up, and I would take the tests, and I'd get C's. And I thought I was pretty smart for being able to do that. Like, look at all these people trying getting A's and B's, and I'm coming in here and just passing, And I didn't have any aspirations to go to college, but I did know it was a good idea to do something, so I was working. And I'd worked through high school as well. Worked at Domino's and Food Lion and a couple other places, always long enough to get a check and then move on. So I was working at this hotel after I graduated high school, and I was like, technically I was the house man. So I would, they'd give me a walkie-talkie and a key to all the rooms, and my job was to pick people up from the airport and then drive them back to the hotel. And the other responsibility I had, which is great, I'd come in, I'd make the cookies at the front desk, and then I'd set up the happy hour with all the hors d'oeuvres and beer and wine. So I'd, do my thing before I got to work, and then I'd get there, I'd drink a couple of beers, have a glass of wine maybe, if I was feeling like wine that night, and then I'd wait till the walkie-talkie got paged, and I'd go out there and I'd go pick people up. Not exactly the smartest thing to do, but that was just kind of the mindset I was in, right? I enjoyed drinking. I had not had any real serious consequences like that. I enrolled in community college at the same time, and I just completely bombed out. Every semester I would sign up for classes and I'd fail them all. I really didn't have any discipline or motivation, I guess you could say, to do anything. And this, whole time, this other thing that's plagued my life still and not gone away is fear. I never felt like, I'd hear about an assignment or something would come up in life, and I would just get so scared. The only thing I knew to do at that point was just drink. Anything I could do to clear my mind and just to kind of black out whatever it was that was bothering me. And at this point, things started getting kind of bad. At that point, like I can see I crossed the line pretty young. I was drinking every day at that point, and I started to have like physical withdrawals. I started to have difficulties with not showing up to work. I got in trouble with the police once or twice, nothing too serious, but I was having court cases and a lot of trouble with my family. And I remember going to the ATM one day to pull out some more money and realizing I had no money to my name, and I was working a full-time job. I was spending it all, wasn't being very smart with it. It kind of hit me at the same point. I don't have any hobbies. I don't have any interests. I don't have anything going for me. It just kind of, this thought crept into my mind like, man, maybe you have a problem, I was in kind of a bad place at the time too, because some people were looking for me, and there was like a brick got thrown through my window the night before, and I was kind of in a bad spot, right? It was all like hitting me right then. So I'm like, I got to maybe it's best I kind of leave town and start over new, where nobody knows me, I don't know anybody else, and I can just kind of wipe the slate clean. I don't know if anybody else had that thought before, but it seems like a really good idea as an alcoholic to just kind of leave everything behind. All these other things are my problem. If I can get away from them, life will be easy. And so I decided I'd move away and go enroll in a community college in another city as well. That was part of the plan. And so I moved to Watauga County and signed up for community college up there. And where Appalachian State is. The goal of eventually transferring to college there. And so I get up there, I go to school, and I figure I'm going to get, basically show up and go to school and get a girlfriend, and all these great things will happen. And I stop drinking, and I go there, and within like a matter of a day or two, I'm overcome with fear and anxiety. And I just remember, I'm a lot less nervous here today than I was back then. Like I just remember thinking, everybody's looking at me. I don't know what to do with my hands. I can't talk to anybody. Just feeling completely coming out of my skin. And I didn't realize how badly I needed to drink. And it wasn't long. I found one guy in the classroom who was kind of a lot like me. We always find the person who drinks like we do. It seems like very easily I could pick him out of a crowd of people. And meet this guy. Next thing I know, we're driving in his car somewhere. We're drinking. We're smoking. We're doing all these other things. And within a matter of a month, I'm not leaving the place I live anymore. I've blown through all the money I had for school. I stopped going to class. I'd failed out of everything. And, my life was just, right back to where it was before in just a very short period of time. And that's just how I guess it's how I drank, right? Like once I take a drink, I can't seem to stop. I can't control it. And the more I drink, the more my problems pile up on me until I just want to black out everything in my life and just not have to worry about it anymore. At this point, I started wondering about like what's going to make me feel better. What's the problem now, right? Because something's not right. I thought if I had a girlfriend, that would fix things, and if I could get a college degree and I could get like a good job where I just show up to an office every day and not have to do any just go in, punch in, punch out, things would be better. That all sounded good. I just didn't know how to do it. But I thought that I had a serious case of depression and anxiety and what they call attention deficit disorder. So I started going to see a couple doctors to see if somebody could fix the problems I was having. This whole time, which blows my mind, that I never once thought that drinking was the problem. Like that was the solution for me for a long time. The problem was when I wasn't drinking, I didn't know how to deal with life on life's terms, or whatever you want to call it. I didn't know how to show up and do what everybody else did. So I went to this doctor, and he's a pretty good doctor. He prescribed me Xanax and Adderall and some other antidepressant I never took. But the other pills worked really well for me. And I figured if I took the pills, one of each, and then I drank on top of it, it was usually a very good result. The problem is, it's like you can't just drink one beer. So I didn't drink it too much, and then you start adding all these other things to make yourself feel better. But I thought I'd found the kind of a nice concoction that worked for me. And everything kind of just becomes a blur after that point in my life. What I can tell you is that I never finished school that year. I did not get a girlfriend. I didn't get a job, really. I actually stopped working completely at that point and pursued other illegal activities that were a little easier to do, that you can kind of do on your own watch and figure out when you want to work, when you don't want to work. Wasn't very profitable, but I found a way to get by. And that's kind of how I lived my life. And during that period of time, I was a really bad person to my family. I didn't call my mom on her birthday. I didn't show up for holidays. I didn't show up at all for a long time. I didn't answer the phone. I didn't call unless I needed something. And it would usually be, and looking back, I never even thought about it, but I'd call every couple weeks and ask for money. And obviously, from her perspective, it's pretty obvious what's going on. So she tried her best to help me. She ended up getting me an apartment, doing the best she could, trying to help me have a place to stay and lay my head at night and be safe. And I moved in there with some friends, and we just continued to do what we did and drink around the clock. And I basically stopped showering at this point. I stopped eating. I stopped functioning like a normal human being, and that's the way I lived my life for the next about 2 years. And it stopped being fun at that point for me. I was always searching for an answer of like, how am I going to get my life back on the straight and narrow? And I would make resolutions at times to fix things and to, you know, I don't know how you put it, but like stop having the problems I was having. And I just didn't know how. I'd wake up in the morning, like a lot of people I'm sure, and wonder, you know, how am I going to accomplish what I need to do today? How am I going to get drunk? Where am I going to get money from? You know, how am I going to go about and, you know, blot out life basically? Because thinking about waking up and facing the world in the day was one of the hardest things to do for me. You know, the last thing I wanted to do was imagine how I was going to go about my day to day. You know, and the easiest thing to do was, well, if I get a drink in me, it's going to be a lot easier to handle this stuff. Except I would drink and I would never handle anything. You know, when I would drink, I'd usually, you know, fall apart emotionally. I'd either be first I'm happy drunk, and then next thing I know I'm trying to fight my friends, or I'm a little disruptive, or you know, I'm crying about how bad my life is and how difficult things were, and why are things the way they are. So, you know, basically what happened is the day I got sober, I didn't really plan on getting sober, but I was actually around my family again. I don't like telling the story, but I do because, you know, it's part of my story. I was drinking like I usually was. Was having a particularly emotional day for some reason, and it got to the point where I was threatening to kill myself. My mom was threatening to commit me, which she should have done, but she was afraid to do that and make that call. And it got to the point where I grabbed a knife and I you know, slit my wrists open. It happened. My whole family was home when that happened. Apparently, it was not a good timing to do it, or maybe it was really good timing. Pretty humiliating experience for me, pretty tragic and horrifying experience for everybody else in my family that watched it. And you know, the next thing I know, I'm waking up in an ambulance, kind of coming to. I got, you know, a surgery, and I got shipped to a mental hospital. And I remember coming to there thinking, like, what am I doing here? Why did they put me in this place? And whose fault is this? You know, who's going to get me out of this mess? And I picked up the phone. I started to make a couple phone calls like, you know, come and get me right now. You know, don't you know who I am? And, you know, I need to be released. And apparently it's not that easy to get uncommitted, whatever you want to call it. So I stayed there for a couple days. I think in day 2, after going through a really, really serious detox, is when I started to have some moments of clarity. Maybe it was a day. I couldn't really tell you. And at that point, I remember having this just really intense thought of just complete sadness, regret, feeling awful about myself. And I just remember being in a lot of pain. I was looking at my hand that I couldn't move anymore because I had damaged some kind of nerves and tendons, and thought of the horrors of the past week and the past couple of years and all the damage I inflicted and where my life was at, and just had this real clear moment of clarity and just thinking, I don't want to hurt people anymore. I don't want to hurt myself. You know, I've done things I have no control over. I didn't have control over myself. I felt like I had done things that were not part of my nature. It wasn't who I was, and it finally just hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I need to do something different, you know. And I think right then, if you gave me a lie detector test or whatever you want to give me, I would have done anything to change right there in that moment. You know, whatever was asked of me. Except I had no information, no direction. I'm still kind of thinking of what's next. What am I going to do to change? Like I had been up to that point. And I probably told myself something like, if I just drink beer and smoke pot when I leave here, everything's going to be okay. You know, that's the sad part. And I remember going to see the doctor that day, and he looked at me and he just kind of had this list and taking notes, and he said, well, you don't have any problems with anxiety or depression, or you're not bipolar. It sounds like you just are an alcoholic with a substance abuse disorder. You need to go get some treatment. And I remember that being like, I don't know what you call it, like the worst news I could have gotten. Because I was looking for somebody to say, here's the bottle of pills and the prescription you take and your life will be better. Like I wanted an easy fix. I wanted an answer why the way I was the way I was. So he recommended I go to treatment. He told me to, come back and see him tomorrow and let him know if that's what I wanted to do. I was pissed, and I came back the next day and talked to him and agreed that I would go. I thought maybe this will work for me. So I ended up going to this treatment center in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I got there and I learned a little bit of alcoholism. I'm not going to say I learned a lot there, but it was a great start for me. And I had a counselor help me out. I learned about, I got a copy of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and there were some speakers that came in there and spoke to us. And the two speakers that came in told their stories, much like I'm doing tonight. And they told about the crash cars and the trips to jail and the broken families and all the things that we do, that I had done, the mistakes I'd made, and the wild life I lived before getting there. And how they weren't that way anymore and they had changed. And I just couldn't believe it. I was like, that guy's got to be on something. Like, nobody just stays sober. It doesn't make sense. Like, I couldn't imagine anybody who, because I could tell they had the same mind I did. I really could relate. I'm like, that's the guy I'd pick out of the crowd, to drink with. That's, I could always spot those people. And I just couldn't believe other people were like that and had changed and had lost that desire to live that way of life. And I wanted that really bad. And I remember going to getting a meeting pamphlet, and I found out where the meetings were in my hometown. I'd never heard of AA before, surprisingly. I had been one of the few people that came to AA and was ready and wasn't already introduced to it like too early or something. And I came to my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and it was not far from my house. There was a clubhouse, lots of meetings, and it was really convenient to get there. And that was a big relief. What happened is I wasn't really paying attention when I went to the meeting. I was really nervous. I was scared to go in. I was pacing, smoking a cigarette out front, and I was thinking, oh man, these people aren't going to accept me. They're not gonna like me. I'm not like them. What if I know somebody in there? All the nervous thoughts you have before going to your first meeting. A guy came outside. He was wearing a tie and some khaki pants and a tucked-in shirt. He shook my hand. He said, "Hey, are you here for the meeting? You want to come inside?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I was really nervous. I'm like, this must be the president of the place I was at. I thought he was really important. He actually worked at the department store down the street. And just got off work, so he was still wearing his tie. But I thought he was, the president of AA or something. And he chaired the meeting that night. And I thought, man, I'd never be able to do that. And another person spoke, and I thought, wow, I'd never be able to help anybody. And then I heard people talking about being sponsors, and I couldn't imagine. I wanted to sponsor really bad. I thought, that sounds great. I'd love for someone to help me. And, just couldn't imagine ever helping somebody, like being that change that you could help somebody else not drink anymore. All that stuff sounded really attractive to me. The problem is I didn't pick a good sponsor that in the beginning. He told me I needed to wait to work the 12 steps, which I'll tell you is not good advice now. I didn't know any differently. And during that period, while I was just going to meetings, I felt like I was just getting sicker and sicker by the day. The longer I stayed sober, the more miserable I got. The more scared I became, the more anxious I was, the more I started thinking about my past and where I come from and how bad I felt about myself. And then I was thinking about all this stuff in front of me. I got to get a job. I got to face all these people. I got to go. What if I see so-and-so in the grocery store, that person I stole from? What if somebody finds out about that thing I did? I was so afraid. I couldn't figure out what to do. And that feeling was overwhelming. And today I know that's alcoholism. Just because I stopped drinking doesn't mean my thinking changed or anything about my past has changed. It was extremely overwhelming, and I remember days where I remember a specific day where I remember crying, sober about 30 days, or 45 days, thinking, how am I ever going to fix my life? How am I ever going to go back into the world and live a successful life? I'm going to be a loser forever, is really what I thought. And I remember a guy picking me up, taking me to a meeting that night, and telling me things were going to be okay, and that I just needed to keep coming back, and my life would change. So I eventually switched sponsors. I got smart and figured out I wasn't doing what was suggested. I read the book. I heard people sharing in meetings. And there was a particular guy who shared in the meeting that got my attention. And I went and asked him to sponsor me, like right there. I said, hey, will you sponsor me? And that's when my life started to change, really, is when I worked the program, the 12 Steps Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's a lot of confusion about, like, what is AA, right? I mean, what is this place we go to, these meetings, what's the purpose of it? And I thought, like a lot of people who leave a treatment center probably, the meetings are like the counseling circle. You'd sit in and talk about your feelings. That's what I thought this was. And I later found out, no, that's just where all the sober members and the people who are trying to get sober that participate in Alcoholics Anonymous, they meet together, they gather, they share their experience, and then you can find someone who's going to help you, and then you can come back and share your experience, somebody to help them. And, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that's laid out in the book, these steps, these instructions that are in there, you follow those, and if you do these things they ask you to do, this program, your life will get better, you'll change, and there's an end result to that. You're taking certain steps to bring about a certain outcome. And that outcome I was explaining was to enter into a relationship with some kind of power that's greater than myself that could change my life. It could solve my problems. I didn't have the power to do that on my own. My life up to that point, I had tried to stop drinking. I had tried to stop doing all these other things and drugs that I had done and tried to control my drinking and do this and that. And if I get this prescription or I move here, like I had tried all these different things to make my life better. And I couldn't do it on my own. I didn't know how to. I couldn't stop thinking about it. That was another thing. I couldn't stop that obsession from going 24/7. And, the sponsor helped me with all that. He worked me through those steps. I remember he emphasized that I would be trying to help other people as part of this program, that I would take the steps, the instructions that he had given me, the way he showed me how to do it. He taught me everything. I mean, the sponsor I had was just an amazing person. He taught me so much about life, about Alcoholics Anonymous, about how to show up to the world that we live in that I didn't know how to do. And he told me that I was going to do that same thing for other people. And that when I see people in the meetings that are new, that I should introduce myself to them, get their phone numbers, see how I can help them, introduce them to other people. He obviously introduced me to a lot of people in the meeting. He took me around to a lot of different meetings and kind of made sure that I was acquainted with Alcoholics Anonymous. He did things just out of the blue, like that I can't even explain. Showing up for work for me on a bad day when I was at work and coming to say hello. And I worked at a restaurant at the time, and he would eat lunch in the restaurant or dinner with his wife, and just come in to see how I was doing, things like that. And that was a huge thing for me. I spent a lot of time with this guy, and he taught me a lot about life and about Alcoholics Anonymous, and we read through the literature together. And it was an amazing experience for me. So when I got to step 4, I did that. I didn't pause too much on it, and I had a pretty profound experience of stay with step 5, like a lot of people do. It wasn't that hard to do either. It was pretty simple instructions. And so I went through that, and I kept working through the steps, and I made amends, and I got to step 12, and I started helping people. And life wasn't, I would say, really easy in the beginning for me. That first year I was living in a halfway house. I was working some dead-end jobs I absolutely hated. I didn't feel very happy every day. My life was getting better. But I think anybody who's new can tell you that rebuilding your life and solving making amends for your past is not always easy. I did really enjoy the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I took part in my home group and going out to dinner with people and all these different activities and conventions, and that saved my life in the beginning. Because on my own, I would have probably sat in the little room I was sharing with this guy, just isolated, and who knows what I would have been thinking about. But instead, I went out and I made friends, and I went and did things in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I pick people up, and I take the guys I live with to the meeting with me, and I tried to make the best of the situation. I tried to help other people. So in that time, some of the things that happened to me during that period, I enrolled back in school and started doing that again, and it was extremely difficult for me in the beginning because I had a lot of fear about whether or not I'd just fail again. I had to teach myself basically all the basics of, you know, how to do math and stuff that I just never paid attention to in school before. And, I eventually graduated from school and got a college diploma with high honors. And, I can only thank Alcoholics Anonymous for that. There was a lot of examples of people in these rooms that had been through what I had been through who showed me it was possible. They told me just to kind of like treat it like AA, just show up early, stay late, read the literature, respect your teacher and listen to what they say like they're your sponsor almost, just all those things. And the important thing I learned early on is my life started to get busier, and I'd really have to thank this advice for the way my life is today. But they said, build your life around Alcoholics Anonymous. Like your home group meets these 2 nights a week. Don't schedule. When you go apply for jobs, write down your availability and say you cannot work on these nights. When I would sign up for my class in school, same thing. With my kids, we try and do the same thing and make sure that we can still participate in Alcoholics Anonymous and put that first. And luckily, there's a lot of other hours in the week, and the busier I get and the more responsibility I take on, I find that if you wake up a little bit earlier and stay up later, somehow you can get it all done. It's not always easy, and it's not always fun to do it that way, but there's not really an option for me. So during this period, I met my wife I think I was about 5 years sober, and she was also an Alcoholics Anonymous. It's kind of a strange way we met, but I won't go into all the details, but she's an amazing person. I'm very lucky to be married to her. Sometimes wondered what was wrong with her when she met me, but it worked out. We got 4 beautiful kids today, and so life, like Steve said, life's busy. Like we have a lot of responsibility. We just got the schedule for my daughter's soccer league and soccer team last week. I'm like, oh my God, how are we going to go through this? And she's like the oldest one, so I'm like, there's 3 other ones that are going to be like, they're going to be playing sports eventually. So it's a lot to think about sometimes, but the things that I've found that are really important over the years is like that's first sponsor. He told me to always be looking for the new person. He would always say, look for the guy who's staring at his shoes and looks alone, doesn't know anybody, and looks real nervous, right? And that was a quick way to find people who were new to the group. And so I started doing that, and I started getting involved in sponsorship. And I'll never claim to be the best sponsor in the world. There's a lot of other people I look up to in Alcoholics Anonymous. I learn a lot from. And but I did my best to sponsor people and take them through the steps, and I still do today. And that's been one of the most rewarding experiences in my life. I really, when I got here, didn't think it was going to be possible for me to help anybody. I felt utterly useless with my problems and my experience. I was afraid of people and, all the things, all the self-doubt I had when I got here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't think I'd be able to overcome that. I didn't think I'd ever be able to go back to school or fix the problems I had in my life. I really didn't. And, I found that the more I helped other people and put aside my own, we'll call them ambitions and goals, and just focused on trying to work the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and to give myself freely without looking for something in return, I ended up getting back tenfold. When I applied to school to get into NC State, my GPA did not meet the minimum requirements because I had all those past attempts at college that stayed on my record. And I wasn't going to apply. I was like, I'll just go to another school, more like a lower tier, whatever you want to call it. And I remember a guy in Alcoholics Anonymous sharing a story. He said that God will, tear down the walls for you if you're taking the right actions and taking the steps. And another person said, you're going to, why don't you just apply? The worst that's going to happen is you just don't get accepted. And, that's what's going to happen if you don't do it at all. So I tried, and, I got in, and that was an amazing experience for me. And that was one of those first things. I'm like, really believe that anything could happen if I just show up and do the work, and I keep trying to do the right things, And over the years, I've been blessed to have, opportunities to do different work that's been very interesting, and travel. I got to go to a meeting in the financial district of Manhattan a couple of years back, and I remember flying into New York City on a plane thinking, like, how am I in this situation? I have no idea what I'm doing. And it's just a really, and I remember praying and just asking God for help and to show me what I'm supposed to do today. I mean, I had an agenda and a plan, but I didn't know how I was going to execute it and face my fears. And I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. And I relied on experience that people had been through those kind of life situations like I had. And I sat in some skyscraper in downtown near the New World Trade Center building, looking out over the New York, the Statue of Liberty, and this, the scenery, and just thinking, man, my life's really changed since I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was really practicing really simple principles that people here taught us. Like just the things are the Big Book tells us they're universal. To try and live a more disciplined life, to rely on God, to seek when you don't have an answer, to pray about it. That's such a simple suggestion. And then if I still don't have the right answer after praying, just to kind of go about my day and not worry about it, the right answer will come. And taking that type of mentality has really helped me over the years. I still have a sponsor and use them a lot. I still go to my home group and participate in that. It's actually meeting tonight. It's the There's a Solution group in Apex, or Holly Springs, North Carolina. So if you're up that way, come visit us. We meet Tuesday and Thursday nights at 7 p.m. I'll mention this to a home group. Like I talk a lot about sponsoring, working the steps. The home group was a part of the fellowship that has been so incredibly important to me. In the beginning, I was really lost. I felt like in Alcoholics Anonymous, coming in, not knowing anybody or anything about it, the program. It's like a different world coming in here. I really needed someone to take me under their wing and show me what to do. But being in a home group provided me with opportunities that I probably wouldn't have happened otherwise, just showing up meeting to meeting, just going to meetings. I met a lot of my best friends in my first home group, people that really cared about me, that showed me what I could do, what I was supposed to do in Alcoholics Anonymous. I got a service position. I started chairing the meetings in the group, which was a pretty amazing experience for me. And another piece of it was the first service position I had was hospitals and institutions in Raleigh, the area I lived in. We'd actually set the schedule for the group to visit the different institutions. There's a lot of them in the area, so we'd get a couple of different things throughout the month, and then I'd chair the meeting or make sure other people were there to show up. And then I found that I enjoyed that so much, I just started going every Monday night. And there was a lot of times I was really busy, but I found that if I just showed up to these institution meetings, every time I walked away, I felt so much happier. I just shared a little bit of my story. I'd listen to some of the people that I came with share their story, and then I'd meet these newcomers that had no idea what their life was going to be like. And I've seen so many people in the same position I was in come out of there and stay sober. Some of them been sober 10 years now, which is pretty amazing. And to see that the power of God works the same for other people, just as it had for me. I had just a tremendous experience, the accountability you get in the home group and all those things. Just something I feel like it's just such an important part of Alcoholics Anonymous. Another important thing that really helped me out was doing correctional work, and I actually need to get back involved in it since I moved back to Raleigh. But one of the most powerful moments of my life was sitting with the guy who had been incarcerated for 8 years. And I had been sober for the same amount of time as him. And looking at both our lives had been very similar, pretty similar age and such. And all the things I had experienced up to that point, all the problems I had that I complained about, how difficult my life could be on any given day. This guy has been living in different, institutions for the past 8 years, staying sober, and he was probably happier than I was at that moment. And he showed me that you could be happy regardless of your circumstances. Just an amazing experience. Became a really good friend of mine. He got out of the facility he was in 2 years ago, and he's still sober today, sponsoring a bunch of people, living an amazing life. And that's just it was a powerful experience for me. Who knew I'd meet one of my best friends who was going to be there? So amazing experience. I'll say this is a part of my story. In 2016, I moved to Richmond, Virginia, and for a job. And did a lot of thought before taking this position because my life was really good in Raleigh. I had an amazing, good sponsor. I had a great home group. I had lots of friends. My family lived there, and an opportunity came up to take on a new job, and I was absolutely terrified to do it, and that almost stopped me from making this decision. But I, kind of analyzed the situation, my sponsor, and looked at the options, and decided that was probably the best thing to do, even though my gut, my thoughts or my feelings were telling me something else. And I had an opportunity to move in sobriety, and I can tell you that was probably one of the hardest things I could do. But the same things I did here were the same things I had to do there. And I got a home group, and I kept the same sponsor I had, and I started trying to help other people. And that was a really good experience because I learned that I learned a lot about myself in that struggle. I learned a lot about growing closer to God, and in that period of time when I felt alone and I had to, more or less create the fellowship that I was looking for. It was up to me to do that. No one else could do it for me. The God, I believe, helped me go through those experiences of change. And this past year is when I had an opportunity to move back home, the right opportunity, and things worked out. So if anybody's going through that or has moved here from somewhere else, I can tell you that it's definitely hard in the beginning, but just to keep going through it, and you have to participate in AA to get the benefits of it. And that was something I screwed up at the beginning. I thought I'll wait to get the right home group or the right situation would come, and the next thing I knew, I found myself sitting at home without a service position, being miserable. So with that, I'm going to end. Just again, thank you for having me. Hopefully my story helps somebody here that's looking for an answer. And thanks for asking me to speak, Steve, and thank you all for your attention tonight.
Max,